Welcome to today's episode of How the Game Was Won. Today we're looking at the game between Revan Aronian with the white pieces and Aronian and Vachier Lagrave with the black pieces, played at the European Team Championship. Now, let's get cracking into this very lengthy game so that we don't waste too much time on too many of the in-between moves between the key positional segments. We start off with D4, knight f6, knight f3, g6, bishop g5, bishop g7, c3, d6, knight b to d2, castles, e4, c5, d5, h6, bishop h4, e6, d takes e6, bishop takes e6, bishop e2, knight c6, castles, queen c7, rook e1, rook f to e8, queen c2, a6, knight f1, d5, bishop g3, queen b6, e takes on d5, knight takes on d5, rook a1, bishop f5, queen c1, rook a to d8, knight on 1 to d2, knight a5, h3, queen c6, knight h4, bishop c8, queen c2, b5, bishop f1, rook takes on e1, rook takes on e1, rook e8, rook takes on e8, queen takes on e8, knight e4, knight b7, queen b3, bishop e6, knight f3, bishop f5, queen takes on d5, queen e4, queen takes on e4, bishop takes on e4, knight d2, and bishop c6. Now, if you have a look at it, is that you've got three pairs of minor pieces remaining on the board, and the funny thing is that there isn't one little bit of imbalance. Even the pawn structure is identical. Nobody has a kingside or queenside pawn advantage that they can try and push and convert into a passer. So as you can see, the pawn structure is identical, but within the situation, black has a marginal better command of space, and we'll see how that is able to be gradually squeezed by the Frenchman. Bishop d3, c4, bishop c2, f5, gaining more space and opening up the route for the king to move eventually down towards the center. f3, king f7, king f1, king e6, king e2, knight c5, bishop f2, knight b7, a3, knight e6, bishop b6, bishop f6, knight f1, knight c8, bishop c5, knight e7, knight e3, h5, bishop b1, h4, and as you can see, the pawns on the king side are more or less fixed in their position, with black having the way more space at his advantage, and there's still some scope for pawn maneuverability on the queen side. Knight c2, knight d5, bishop d4, bishop g5, knight e3, knight f4, king d1, and knight d3. Interesting transformation. Vachier Lagrave gets the bishop pair, but in return his pawn, or he'll get the bishop pair, but in exchange for a weakened d3 pawn, which will be requiring constant attention. As you can see, bishop takes d3, c takes d3, leaving him with that isolated d3 pawn that will require constant defending along the line. But at the same time, that pawn is a passer that should he be able to defend it and get the king into support, could become quite a bit of a problem for Aronian. Continuing, king e1, bishop d5, king d2, bishop c4, bishop b6, king d7, b4, bishop f4, bishop d4, king e6, bishop b6, g5, bishop d4, g4, and black is trying to break through on the king side, but it doesn't really change the assessment of the position. And one thing that one must remember is that white is under pressure all the time, and it's much easier to play black and also we now getting into 55 minutes into the game, and invariably it takes up way more time in your clock defending a tight position than what it does to play the attacking side. H takes g4, f takes g4, f takes g4, bishop g5, king e1, bishop b3, King D2, Bishop C4, King E1, Bishop D5, King F2, and finally all of the positional pressure comes to bear, and Aronian makes a critical error, his one and major critical error of the game. Instead, he could have gone for something along the lines of, for instance, knight takes d5, king takes d5, bishop f2, king c4, bishop d4, king b3, king d1, king takes an a3, bishop f2, king b3, bishop d4, king c4, bishop g7, and that gives a fairly balanced position, because there's no way that black will be able to break through on the queen side either. And black will have to shift his attention across to the king side, but that doesn't work, and the black king going to the king side will have to pass through f4, and the white king will just simply move to d2 and block everything down. But in the game itself, 11 played king f2, and that allowed Vachier Lagrave to play the superb d2, and because obviously he wouldn't miss out on an opportunity like that. Knight d1, bishop d3, king e2, bishop c4, check, king f2, bishop b3, king e2. Here, for instance, Vachier Lagrave could have played for king d5, bishop g7, bishop c4, king f2, king e4, with the king penetration, and it's an easier way to win. But at the same time, the knight cannot really move, as bishop e3 is a nice little mate. For instance, knight b2, and the bishop comes to e3 with checkmate. So, getting back to the game in hand, Vachier Lagrave played king f7, knight b2, king g6, c4, bishop takes on c4, so b takes on c4, bishop c3, bishop f4, bishop takes on d2, king g5, knight d1 played by Aronian. Aronian had at his disposal the option of playing something like a4, bishop d2, king d2, king g4, king c3, king g3, b5, 8x and b5, 8x and b5, king g2, b6, h3, bishop b7, h2, b8 queen, h1 queen, queen b7 check. Again, a fairly balanced and even assessment. The queens will be exchanged off. Then following that, all that white simply needs to do is to pick up the pawn with the knight, and it will be a dead drawn position. But with knight d1, you've got king g4, knight e3 check, king h5, knight d5, bishop e7, so bishop e5 correction, bishop c3, bishop h2, knight f6 check, king g6, knight e4, bishop a4, knight d2, king f5, knight f3. And instead of knight f3, Aronian could have played, for instance, knight c2, bishop b5, king d3, king e6, king d4, bishop g1 check, and knight e3. And there are pins everywhere, but there's no really clear win in sight for Vachier Lagrave. But after knight f3, it's just simply bishop g3, bishop e1, king g4, bishop g3, king takes g3, king d2, bishop c6, knight takes on h4, king takes on h4, king c3, bishop b5, and in this position Aronian resigned, because after bishop b5, a4, king g3, and it's just the g pawn falls, and Vachier Lagrave will be able to get his king across and shepherd that c pawn through to the queening square. So Aronian resigned. Win goes to Vachier Lagrave of France, and that, my friends, is how the game was won. Feel free to share this video out amongst all of your chess friends. Don't forget thumbs up if you like the content. Any comments, questions, criticisms, post that in the comment section down below. And finally, down below the screen is a big red subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, that way you stay subscribed to my channel for all the new content that comes out to you on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Till we meet again, stay carved up for the win out there. I'll see you next time. Cheers.